Hi, y'all. My name is Zoë Rein, and I'm an English major at Elon University in North Carolina. My project is called Rethinking Writing in STEM, implementing creative writing to foster critical thinking and inclusion. This project started as a brainchild of mine and my mentor professor, Dr. Heather Lindenmans, because I'm an English education major, but I'm also a math major. And in my time as both of those things, I noticed a lot of parallels between the disciplines. Most significantly, I remember a math professor telling us to write a haiku about our math abilities, a proofwriting professor having us write weekly reflections on our productive struggle in the class, and even a statistics professor reading an excerpt from Harry Potter in order to explain an abstract concept. I began to wonder if there were a lot of parallels and place for both of these things within STEM and writing. In a class with Dr. Lindenman, I began to research what would become the basis of my research, and engagement and inclusion within writing. From my reading, I first explored what other researchers wrote about implementing creative, expressive, personal, and reflective writing, what I now call SEPR writing for efficiency. Many programs focused on STEM writing to communicate already, but I was also investigating a lot of common conflicts in the STEM field. For instance, I saw a cry for identity inclusion in minority represented students, such as female students and students of color. STEM programs, like many disciplines and institutions, don't always do the best job at giving voice to those students in the retaining and maintaining of their identity. When reading about these prior writing implementations, I saw several academics try to address the personal identity through reflective writing practices. Additionally, researchers use types of writing to access critical thinking. Later in my research, I had someone tell me it's not like they just took the day off by doing creative writing. In fact, my early literature shows that creative writing has a wealth of applications towards both critical thinking and inclusion. And in my project, I aim to combine those potential assets within the STEM field. Thus, I arrived at my research questions. So how might creative, poetic, expressive, and reflective, or SEPA writing, support many underrepresented members of the STEM community in identity-affirming ways? And how might SEPA writing address students' learning, critical thinking, and creative problem solving? To explore my questions, I partnered with two undergraduate STEM classes at my university, a calculus class and an engineering statics class, and I worked with each professor to design a SEPA writing assignment for their students in fall 2022. I went into their classes to have students complete the assignments. In the calculus class, students wrote two limericks on continuity and a sonnet about derivatives. And on the other side, engineering students wrote reflective journals about their engineering experiences that culminated with an engineering autobiography. This was all summed up with why they wanted to be an engineer in their personal past, present, and futures. I also asked students to have a survey response and about the STEM experiences and about the project as a whole. And additionally, I polled two math students, one engineering student, and both faculty members to interview about their own STEM narratives and the project as a cohesive whole. From these methods, I pulled out several major themes as findings. Firstly, the survey data question about past exposure to writing, reflection, and creative thinking showed that writing is not as common in either one of the classes, but students believed they had encountered a lot of critical, analytical, and creative thinking. On the other hand, reflective thinking was not as common in either of the classes and was pretty spread across the board. Importantly, student surveys indicated that reflection writing might have been more accepted than the creative writing later on. Another large major theme that I discovered is that students mostly focused on the novelty of a new type of writing in their responses to the survey and interview questions, rather than the process of writing to learn. Instead of poetic language facilitating mathematical thought, students dialed in on how the poetic language diverged from typical math vocabulary. This could have a positive or negative effect on the class. For instance, the math professor that I worked with was worried that the specific language of math would get lost in the colloquial and poetic language employed by students. But on the contrary, the students reported finding the poems specific and helpful with the descriptive practice they needed for tests. Finally, I noticed that students felt welcome in STEM communities most when they felt confident in their STEM abilities and especially their STEM practices. For instance, some students listed themselves as being welcome, confident, and STEM people, even if they hadn't declared a major in STEM. In one of the classes, there was a majority of white male identifying students, and in another, there was a larger diversity of gender and racial identities. However, in both, students identified themselves as competent and welcome as a whole. Moving forward, I plan to consolidate my findings into more points for discussion, especially in answer to the questions, how can we overcome the factor in the novelty of SEPA writing to focus on writing to learn? Similarly, how can I focus on confidence, belonging, and STEM proficiency using the SEPA writing? Thank you and enjoy the conference.